school. Prior to that, I worked as a dustbin man. I worked in McDonald's, washing plates. I did all sorts of things until I found social work, which became my love.
Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of View from the Hill, the podcast from Tar Hill, where we usually speak with leaders in the world of local government. But today, joining me is the National Director of Safeguarding at the Church of England, Alex Kubeyinje. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, hi. Nice to see you. How are you?
Yeah, good. You?
Not too bad.
Glad to hear it. Thanks for sort of inviting us into this office. The first segment of every pod that we do, we sort of just look into why do you do what it is that you do? What are the maybe some early life influences that took you into the path of the social care world, local gov, and then we'll get into eventually how you got into the role that you're currently in. So you want shedding a bit of light on that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery sometimes actually, because I didn't really do well at school.
Yeah.
So, secondary school, didn't do really well. Grew up in South London, single parent on an estate. So school wasn't really my thing. Football was, but not really classwork. So I think the social work journey actually started because with conversations with my wife when I met her many, many years ago. And my younger sister as well, because I felt like, because of my lived experiences, because I'd always kind of danced around trouble, but never really got into trouble. And they felt that I'd have a lot to offer young people. I think at that time they thought I'd be a better mentor. So that's how it kind of started from there. I went to school. Prior to that, I worked as a dustbin man. I worked in McDonald's. I worked washing plates. I did all sorts of things until I found the social work, which became my love.
Nice. So what was the first step into it then? Or, was it a particular role, someone that recommended it, or how did you fall into it then?
So I went to school, which was a bit of a challenge because I hadn't really done school in a while, and qualified, became a qualified social worker, got my first job in the London borough of Croydon. That was back in the days before they had a proper assessment team, long-term team, looked after team, and I come to minor team. So my first job was a locum. I think it was either an organisation called Blue Arrow. So Blue Arrow, I think it's that way back. And I remember my first day. So turned up at the reception, Strand House in Thornton Heath, I think it was. Turned up and met my manager, and I was just giving 4 or 5 files, put on the table, and it was crack on, get on with it. And that was my first day into social work, really.
Amazing. So what part of the service was that focusing on?
So it was long term then. So I had unaccompanied minor children, I had children on a child protection plan, I had court cases, I had children, child in need. I had it all. It was very, very generic in those days.
Right.
And I remember it was really weird because we had 2 mobile phones for the whole team, so you had to sign it in and sign it out. And we had 1 desktop laptop that 4 of us had to share. It was really interesting times. Yes, I feel very, very old now, actually.
This is me making you look back on it, my bad. But fine, let's go sort of further into it then. Over the next, few years after Croydon then is when you would have gone into over time more substantive roles. What was the journey like to, climbing the ladder, so to speak, in the world of social care? And are there any sort of particular places that helped, do that quicker? So I'm looking for the word propel you in your career, or was it all pretty gradual?
I think it was pretty gradual actually, because I don't think there was any particular place. I think every place I worked, I kind of, in my head, there was the good, the bad, the ugly, and the crazy.
Yeah.
So in my mind, you take the things that you think are good and you want to enhance on, the things that you already knew that were good, you kind of build on, and then the things that were not so good, you kind of think, well, I never want to be that kind of leader. I never want to be that kind of practitioner. And I think I always had like a 3-year plan.
Okay.
So I always had a 3-year plan, and I always thought about the next step of the journey. What would that look like? So in year 2, I'm already starting to think, what do I need to get to the next level? And I think there was one role where I ended up coming out of London, and people said I was really crazy, but the role was really different to what I would have got in the London borough. And I think that helped me to build my confidence, learn different areas of children's, build some really good relationships, and really start to think about what kind of senior leader I wanted to be. So there was something there about going out to come back in. There was something about being a black leader as well. Yeah. I remember people said, oh, you need to cut off your dreadlocks, you're going to be a senior leader. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to do that, because surely they're not appointing me for my hair or my ugly look.
Very little to do with so mindset.
You see what I mean? So it must be about my ability to lead and help people to make the right decisions for children and families. So I think for me, that was really important, being a black leader, having a lot of white leaders who were allies. Yeah, there wasn't very much leaders that looked like me at that time. And I think there were some situations that kind of help you build on your resilience, and your determination that actually I need to get the right outcome for children and families. And I think there was also something about me around, on this leadership journey, there were so many knocks where you kind of think, is this me? Can I do this? Am I quite right? I'm not sure, but you always find a way, and having good people around you is really good.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into how what the journey looked like to eventually land in this role, but I'm curious to hear about those knocks, if you don't mind going into it. Like, is there any example that you could point to, if you'd like to, obviously, and that particularly shaped the type of leader you are, or the type of work you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think I remember there's been quite, well, not that many, but there's been a few.
Yeah, and they stick with you, don't they?
They do stick. So I remember there was a situation where something had gone wrong in one of the authorities I've been working with young people, and the leaders at the time were very kind of blaming to the extent that you actually felt it was your fault, your team's fault. It was more about blame and trying to understand what had happened and how do we learn from this. I don't believe people come to work to do a bad job. I think you have bad days, but I don't think you come to do a bad job. And seeing that made me think, you know what? I don't want to be that kind of leader. I want to be a leader where people can come and say, look, I think I made a mistake here. I want to be able to unpick it with people to understand what it is and how we can get the learning from that. That was one. And then there was another one where I was quite senior in a role, and I've gone into this meeting, and I am the only black guy in this whole meeting.
Seems like a theme.
And I remember they were debating something, debating, and they got to this point where they'd already made up their mind and their decision. So when the meeting started, introduction started, but somebody made an assumption that did they say was I a mentor or a coach or something for a young person or something? And actually, when I actually said what my title was, literally the whole room just went quiet. And to me, I was like, okay, this is weird, but we're going to get through it. And that, for me, also was a driver to say, you know what? Don't judge a book by its cover. And I think that's what they did in that situation. I think another situation, my last situation, I guess, that was a big one for me was building that kind of resilience and that resilience about, I've got to keep on going. I've got to keep on going. And what I learned in that resilience period is that the most important people to me and any organization is the people. And you can't forget the people. So regardless of what part of the system they work in, you must always have that empathy, compassion, and respect, and treat people with kindness. And those were some of the situations that I learned through some of the knocks, that these is type of skill sets I wanted to have.
I guess it probably translates into a certain like humility, like that came with you because your career, right? Is treating everyone equally was something that, clearly in your journey you didn't benefit from at all times. And I guess is that something you've tried to keep with you so that you never contribute to that sort of thing in any of the roles you're in?
Yeah, because I think when you start out, you have this mindset where you kind of think like, I have to know everything, I have to do everything, I need to know all these things. But it's actually with the knockbacks and growing as an individual and a person, you have to start to develop a mindset of, if you're in a local authority, for example, I might say there are other people in the organization that have an ego. I don't need to build that to work. There's not going to be room for 5, 6 of us to have egos. I'm not saying that there are egos in local authority, but I'm just saying. And you kind of think of it in a way that, what are we here for? We're here to serve our communities. We're here to make a difference. We're here to make an impact where we can. And I think you can't do it all on your own. You can't know it all on your own. So you have to then trust. You have to be able to dance from the balcony to the dance floor. You have to be seen as being human as well. And the only way you can do that is by putting people first, because they are the ones that go out there. I always say to people that the work that you see people do, a lot of it, if not most of it, is done on goodwill. Because you can't say if you're going to pay everyone for working Saturdays, Sundays, 8 o'clock till 12 midnight, which is not appropriate anyway, you're going to go broke really, really quick. You're not going to be able to fund anything. So a lot of people go on because they want to make the difference. They want to make the change. They want to be part of the change. They want to see good outcomes for children and young people and vulnerable adults. So that work is done on goodwill. But if you are a leader that you don't see them and you can't connect with them and you're not hearing them, I think you're on a highway to London. That's not really going to be a nice culture or place to live.
Yeah, I mean, and from our perspective, that looking at organizations from recruitment and retention perspective, the more successful local authorities in terms of their future planning are those that have that culture of when people can be themselves, can be comfortable, and it's easier to develop and plan for the future if you know that people are going to stay. So not only is it good from a moral perspective and people are feeling good about themselves, but even if you're wired to think in a more logical way, it's beneficial to most organizations to have that kind of culture anyway, might end in anyway. So to move on to say the role that you're in now, how did that come about? And I'm just trying to put a couple of pieces together with what you said earlier. You've been in rooms where you felt like, one of the first from your background to be in the position that you were in. Was that more so the case going into Church of England? Because I don't know, but I'm making a bit of an assumption that sort of culture would have stayed in the organisation with the history and stature of the Church of England in England.
Well, the Church of England, it's a really, sometimes you have to argue whether there is such a thing as a Church of England, because it's made up of all these various charities, etc. In my senior management group, I was the only black person in that group for a while until we got a racial justice director. I think there are many meetings I go to where I am the only black person in that meeting. But it's also interesting because even if you look at race, it's also different around. When we look at the opportunities that they may have had, that is different to myself.
Yeah.
Some people went to Eton, they went to Cambridge, they went to really good universities. Some of them didn't, but some of them did. So right there, you're thinking, how many of you grew up on the South London estate?
Understand it is sort of like how I got in the city, right? Like,
How many of you understand the hustle?
yeah.
But it's really interesting and it's very different, and you can't get away from the fact that the church itself has got a horrific history of abuse and a horrific history of not speaking truth to power.
Right.
You know, I can say in the last X amount of years that things are getting better, things are improving. But sometimes in this role, you find yourself in a role where you feel like, if you think of the sandwich, unlike the filling in the middle of the sandwich, because you get it from the wider community, and sometimes, you know, the clergy as well are looking to for advice, or sometimes you have to challenge. So it has been a really, you couldn't find no more different than the Church of England compared to a local authority. Yeah. The politics is different. The funding is different. This is an organisation that has canon law. It's a really different space. And I think when you've got, 42 dioceses, you've got X amount of cathedrals, you've got 17,000 parishes that you're kind of responsible for supporting to deliver the national agenda for safeguarding. It's a very different vibe to being in the context of a local authority. So where you're going, I mean, getting all of England and Europe, because we've got the dioceses in Europe as well. So it's really, really massive, and it is a big responsibility, and it's different.
Yeah,
it's very different.
How long has it been at the stage then? It's just 2 years, I think, approximately.
Yeah, just did 2 years on the 1st of September. This year was 2 years. So I think I was probably the longest serving national director as well. I think we've had about, might be the 5th or the 4th, 4th or 5th. So, and it's not until you're in the role that you can understand why people don't stay.
Right.
Because as you will see, there's a lot of things in the media. Some of it is true, some of it is not true. You know, but as an organization, you know, and as a leader, do you really want to be going out and be doing tit for tat with people? Like, you don't. You want to try and resolve it and deal with it in the best way you can. But the church is on, we've got a way to go with our systems and processes, but we have done a lot of good work. We have done a lot of good work, and hopefully the audits that are being undertaken will start to highlight some of the good work that we do, because we don't always talk about the good stuff that we do, because our history and our past is so horrific that we are in that space a lot, rather than actually more of the preventative stage and the innovation that we bring to the Church of England.
Right. And so what kind of made you feel like you were ready for that massive change that you just described between the local authority and setting? Like, were there any skills that you picked up which now you look back on, which has helped you make that transition into a completely different kind of organisation from what you're saying? Well, how did that happen? Because that much of a change must have made you take a bit of an adjustment period in the early days, once you started, or even during the interview process. How different was it with that?
Well, I think, like, when I sit down and I think about it, I think there is something about children and family social work and working in a local authority that just, I don't know, it just strengthens your resilience, your understanding, well awareness, your resilience, your empathy, your ability to have difficult conversations, to support young people and their families to kind of go on a journey of discovery and hopefully get to a place where they are so together and settled that it's nice that we can leave them together with the rest of their life and you don't need to intervene anymore. I think over the years, I mean, there are so many people that I've met in a local authority context, from security to family support workers to social workers, to housing colleagues, internal risk committees, audit committees, right across to NHS colleagues, police colleagues. There's just so many people, and more importantly, so many children and young people and their families that I have met that has helped shape this journey.
Yeah.
Did I ever think that I would be in this role? No. Did I even actually 110% know what I was getting into? I don't think I did. Were there times where I felt I want to go back to my comfort zone, to what I know, what I understand, what I feel comfortable with? Yeah, there were lots of times when I felt that. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to try as best as possible to come out of your comfort zone, to do something different, to have different experiences. A lot of the skills that we have in the local authority are transferable to organizations and vice versa. So in my mind, there's just so many people that I could call and say their names and that have helped me on this journey. And more importantly, I think my faith and my family have been very important in doing this. So, as I said in the beginning, I think when I do speak to some people about the church and what happens, a lot of people are like, "You're mad. Why are you there? That this is crazy. I've never heard of it before. Why is it the way it is?" And it's one of the oldest organization, for want of a better word, that we have in this country, really. So it's got a lot of history, a lot of challenges, but there is also a lot of good. And I like to feel that my team and myself play a part.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Awesome.
In terms of that uncertainty when moving between you move sectors, right? Like for people like who got to here, a lot of people that are going to be watching this, Tario community consists of people that don't be in local gov, but who may be considering a change from maybe a permanent role into an interim, which may feel equally as big a job for them at this stage. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's ready to embark on that kind of adventure or journey that they might not know what they're kind of stepping into? How did you, how did you mentally sort of prepare for it?
So, I think it depends where you are in your life, I guess, and what you want out of it. So, the interim work, I did some interim work, and it was interesting. I got to meet new people, new families. I was the workplace, my work colleagues, my family, the people I spend the most time with when I'm not with Mrs. K and the brats. So, you get to meet new ways of doing things, different types of politics, and different innovation around working, different challenges. Not one local authority is the same. And I feel like sometimes if you're not sure and you're looking for a home or you're trying to figure things out, the interim way is not the best. It's not the worst way to go. I think it actually gives you some comfort. You must really have 6-month, 12-month contract. You get to feel out whether that organization fits your values, whether you're actually, this is my family and I'd want to stay there. So I think that's really good. I think when we talk about local authority work and going into a different sector, I think sometimes as a local authority, you just have your mind that this is my DNA and this is my way, and we don't necessarily think that we could do other things. And I would say that if you find the right organization, you can branch out and give it a go and try new things, but there's nothing stopping you at any given time coming back to the local authority, So I don't think anyone should put themselves in a particular box. I think we need to try different things sometimes. Yes, are you going to be scared about it? Yeah, you will. I was. Does it take you out of your comfort zone? Yes, it will, but you'll be fine. Ask the right questions, get closer to the right family members, and you'll be right. And then you've always got tired people to go back to it.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah, let's get it.
I wanted to ask them if you were to go back to the start of your career, or just before you did start, what advice would you give to yourself, and how would you maybe do some things differently, if you could?
I think, from my perspective, looking back on my journey, I think I would have been a lot more ambitious.
Okay.
And I'll explain a little bit why, because there were a lot of black social workers, but when I looked to the team manager level, it started to fizzle out. And on reflection now, I think, yes, there was some areas that I worked where, there was racism there, and I think to some extent I let it hold me back a bit.
Okay.
Because I've always had it drummed in me, and I believe that you have to work harder as a black person to get where you need to get. Yeah. But actually, I think I would have believed in myself a lot more, because I think there was something about the organizations and understanding where I was going, where I was going to work. I could have done a lot more research into that. I think I should have perhaps got a mentor a lot earlier, because for a big part of my journey, they were white people that supported me, that believed in me, but I had to come to the table and engage with those people to get where I got. I think the other bit for me is I need to get rid of that thing where I think, there's no black people there, so I can't do it. Black people don't do that. No, I should have been more focused, more ambitious, and I should have been a go-getter, because you look at it and you think, black people have been service managers for a long time. They were ready years ago to be heads of service. They were ready years ago and some heads of service, they were ready years ago to be directors. There's some directors of social care, not many, that are DCSs now. There's a few a couple, 2 or 3 I can think of, and I think they're going to be amazing. And there's a few black chief execs I know, and I know they're going to be amazing. But it's almost like if I could go back in time, I would have been more of a go-getter.
Yeah.
That you can't tell me I can't do this. I'm going to smash this thing in. And I would have started to smash it a lot earlier. And I think it's also about who you surround yourself with. You surround yourself with people who have the same belief, the same drive as you. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of competition, But there's also something about how. So when I was a senior social worker, I had lots of black colleagues I could talk to. When I was a team manager, there was quite a few I could talk to. When I started to get into that service manager space, not really. Then when you start to get to the head of service director space, there's hardly anybody to talk to. It becomes really, really lonely, even though a white DCS will say his or her role is really lonely, but it's lonely in a different way.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So I feel, I would have been more focused. And my advice to people out there is go get yours. Go get yours. You can do this, and I can see that there is a change. Is it as fast as we would have liked it? No. But the people that are making the change, they are actually not sitting at home thinking, I can't do this. Nah, they're like, yeah, I want some of this. I'm going to get mine. And they've gone out and they've done it. So I would suggest if you're a service manager, start to think about head of service, director, DCS, chief exec. Start to think about how you want to do. Don't let other people dictate what you can and cannot do.
Yeah.
There was always going to be a home for you somewhere to achieve your dreams. And that's what I would say to people, younger than me, I guess.
No, that's a great message, I think, to leave our community with. But what about you now at this stage? You've had a chance to sort of almost step out of the world of local gov and view it for the first time from an external perspective. What kind of, firstly, what's the future looking like for you? And secondly, what have you sort of observed once now that you've had that different perspective and working in a different kind of organization?
It's really interesting because the politics in the Church of England is like no other. I mean, that could be Barack Obama. It's right. The maneuvering in the Church of England. It's really interesting, I think that was really good, that kind of political, how do you maneuver, how do you influence, because it's not all about, because local authority sometimes can be very command and control kind of thing. Yeah. While actually in the church, you have to learn how to influence, how to build relationships, which is a very different way of doing things than the local authority I was thought in my mind. Mm-hmm. I think the local authorities now, when I look at it, from outside in, I do feel like if you're thinking along cross council, maybe there's like a 4 billion gap, like people are, in budgets, you think around the challenges around housing, the pressures that housing bring, you think about social care and the challenges that brings. You think about climate change, have we actually recovered from Brexit? Have we actually recovered from COVID? So I feel a lot of sympathy for colleagues in local authority because there's something about innovation. We want to be innovative, we want to do all these things, but innovation sometimes takes money to do it. It takes time. And actually it's a really difficult place and a hard place to make some decisions and how, you have to cut services, for example, and the implication that the services have on the communities we serve. So I don't think it's an easy time to be there in local authority, but for those colleagues that are there and are having to deal with these tough decisions every day, with members, chief execs, various directors across the council and the workforce, the general workforce, I think it's tough, but it just shows people's commitments to trying to find ways of how we invest differently, how we support our communities to do more for themselves, and how we as leaders create boroughs, environments where actually, we're dealing with some of the wicked issues on very limited money. And some of these issues are not going to go away. So I don't think innovation's ever going to stop. I don't think risk-taking is ever going to stop. I just feel, there's something that central government needs to do here. And the sooner they wake up to some of these issues that are not going to go away, the better. And I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, cool. I think it's a good place to leave it. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate yours.